Get this kid and his beeping machine off my flight now! The words sliced through the quiet cabin like a thunderclap. Every head turned toward the middle aisle. 8-year-old Malik Carter froze in his seat, clutching the small oxygen tube that kept his lungs moving. His wide eyes darted to his father, Marcus Carter, whose strong hands trembled as he adjusted the medical machine humming softly between them. Marcus had boarded the flight from Atlanta to Chicago that morning with nothing but a small backpack, Malik's medical papers, and hope. Hope that his son's rare lung disease could be treated at the children's hospital waiting hours away. The doctor had warned him, no stress, no interruptions, keep his oxygen stable. He thought flying early in the day would mean fewer problems. He was wrong. Standing before them was Sandra Blake, a tall flight attendant with a perfectly ironed uniform and a look that could cut steel. Her lips curled in disapproval as she glared at the portable life support device between Malik's legs. "Sir, what is that noise?" she asked sharply, crossing her arms. Marcus tried to keep calm. "It's his oxygen unit, ma'am. He can't breathe properly without it. I have the medical clearance right here." Sandra didn't look at the papers. She didn't even blink. "This wasn't pre-approved by the airline. Devices like that can interfere with our systems." Several passengers began whispering. A woman 2 rows behind peeked over her seat, eyes filled with concern. A man in a business suit frowned, shaking his head. Malik's breathing grew faster, and his small fingers gripped his father's arm. "Daddy, I'm okay, right?" the boy whispered weakly. Marcus forced a smile. "Of course, buddy, just relax." He turned back to the attendant. "Please, I spoke to your airline before booking. They confirmed it's allowed. It's FAA approved. Here's the form." "I said turn it off," Sandra interrupted, her tone cold and final. "Or we'll have to remove you both from this aircraft." The oxygen machine let out a soft beep, a sound that echoed far louder than it should have. Sandra's glare hardened. Her words carried down the aisle like a verdict. "Get this kid and his beeping machine off my flight now. Passengers," gasped. One woman covered her mouth. The boy beside the window started recording with his phone. Malik flinched at the harshness of her voice, clutching the tube tighter to his chest. Marcus's heart pounded. He stood up slowly, his voice trembling but steady. "Ma'am, please. My son's life depends on that device. You can't just—" "Sir," she snapped, cutting him off again. "You're disturbing other passengers. Sit down before I call security." Marcus's jaw clenched. He wanted to shout, but one look at Malik stopped him. The boy's breathing had become shallow. The monitor lights flickered yellow. No one in the cabin spoke. The hum of the engines felt distant, drowned beneath the weight of the moment. Then a soft voice from the back broke the silence. "Excuse me," said an elderly woman. "That child needs his oxygen. You can't take it away." Sandra ignored her. Her eyes never left Marcus. From across the aisle, a man began to film, whispering into his phone. "This flight attendant's losing it. Poor kid can't breathe." Marcus sank back into his seat, holding Malik close. He felt helpless, ashamed even. He'd worked double shifts just to afford this ticket, believing air travel would bring them closer to saving his boy's life. But as Malik's fragile chest rose and fell beneath the mask, Marcus realized this flight was about to become something else, something much darker. What no one in that plane knew was that Sandra Blake's arrogance would soon collide with fate, because the man who'd soon walk down that aisle was her own father, and his arrival would change everything. The tension in the cabin was thick enough to cut. Marcus could feel every eye on him as he sat back down, gently checking Malik's oxygen mask. The boy's breathing came in short, shallow bursts. The small machine hummed and beeped softly, a sound of life, not disturbance. Yet to Sandra Blake, it was nothing but defiance. She leaned forward, voice sharp as a blade. "Sir, this is your final warning. Either turn that device off or I'll have to escalate this matter." Marcus met her stare. "Escalate it then. I'm not risking my son's life because of your ego." Gasps rippled across the cabin. A mother in the next row whispered to her husband, "He's right. She can't do that." Someone in the back muttered, "This is discrimination, plain and simple." But Sandra stood tall, eyes flashing. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You people never follow the rules." Marcus froze. Those words, "you people," cut deep. His fists clenched. But before he could speak, Malik coughed violently. The boy's entire body tensed, his small hand gripping his father's wrist in panic. Marcus leaned closer, desperate. "Hang on, Malik. Breathe slow, son. Breathe slow." Sandra rolled her eyes and turned toward the cockpit phone. "I'm calling the captain." "Wait," a calm female voice said. A nurse, sitting 2 rows away, stood up, holding her ID badge forward. "I'm Nurse Danielle Reyes, Pediatric ICU. That child needs oxygen now. His color's fading." Sandra spun around. "Ma'am, please return to your seat. I have medical training." "Not enough to handle hypoxia at this altitude," Danielle interrupted, her tone steady but firm. "You're about to cause a medical emergency." Passengers began recording openly now, phones pointed from every direction. The situation was spiraling, and Sandra knew it. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I'm following company safety procedures," she said coldly, grabbing the machine. "This equipment wasn't cleared by our medical desk." Marcus's voice cracked as he reached for the papers again. "I have the clearance. Look at the email. Please, he's turning blue." Sandra snatched the papers, glanced briefly, then tore them in half. "Forged," she muttered. The sound of tearing paper felt like the snapping of something far greater. Marcus's patience, the crowd's silence, the illusion of order. "Stop!" shouted a man from the back. "She just ripped up his documents!" The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Flight attendants, please secure the cabin." But the cabin was already far from secure. Marcus stood up, tears blurring his vision. "If my son dies because of you, I swear—" "Sit down," Sandra barked, her voice trembling now. "Security will handle this." Malik gasped again, his mask slipping. Danielle rushed forward despite Sandra's protests, pressing the mask. Back against the boy's face and adjusting the flow. The beeping grew louder, irregular. Malik's eyelids fluttered. Marcus dropped to his knees beside him, whispering, "Stay with me, champ. Don't let go." A woman started crying in the back. Someone yelled, "Do something!" And as Malik's breathing faltered and the oxygen monitor began flashing red, the entire cabin realized the unthinkable. A life was slipping away in front of them, while the one person meant to help stood frozen, clinging to her pride. The sound of Malik's oxygen monitor faltering echoed like a ticking bomb. Each beep, pause, beep seemed slower than the last. Marcus's hands trembled as he adjusted the mask again, but the color was already draining from his son's face. Malik's small chest rose once, then barely moved. "Malik! Hey, look at me, son!" Marcus's voice cracked in terror. Passengers unbuckled, leaning forward in panic. The cabin, once filled with quiet murmurs and engine hums, now buzzed. "With fear, please do something!" yelled the nurse, Danielle, waving at Sandra. "Get the emergency medical kit, now!" But Sandra just stood there, frozen. Her authority, her rules, everything she believed in suddenly felt meaningless. The eyes of 200 passengers were on her, their glares piercing like daggers. Protocol says," she stammered. "Forget protocol," Danielle shouted. "This child is crashing." Marcus dropped to the floor beside his son's seat, pulling Malik into his lap. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he whispered, "Breathe, baby, please breathe." The small boy's lips were turning purple. Phones were raised everywhere now. Streams of live videos appeared online within seconds. "Flight attendant refuses. Oxygen to sick child. Delta plane turns into nightmare at 30,000 feet." People commented in real time, horrified. A man near the aisle pressed the call button repeatedly, yelling for the captain. "This kid's dying! Get help!" Sandra's hands shook as she fumbled for the medical kit, finally dragging it from the overhead bin. But it was too late. Malik's monitor went flat. No sound, no beeps. A gut-wrenching silence swallowed the cabin. Marcus's cry broke it like glass. "No! No, no, no!" Danielle moved fast, lowering Malik to the floor. "We're not losing him," she said, beginning chest compressions while Marcus held the oxygen mask in place. "Come on, little man, breathe for me." Sandra backed away, tears brimming in her eyes for the first time. The passengers glared, filming every second. Her once proud uniform now looked like a badge of shame. Then, miraculously, a weak cough escaped Malik's throat. His chest twitched. A beep flickered faintly back on the monitor. Danielle exhaled in relief. "He's not gone yet, but we need to land this plane now." A flight attendant rushed to the cockpit yelling, "Medical emergency! We need to divert!" Marcus looked down at his son, trembling. "Hold on, buddy. Daddy's right here." Sandra leaned against the cabin wall, pale and shaking. She'd never felt smaller in her life, and yet she had no idea. The worst moment of her life was still to come, because the man about to walk down that aisle would break her world apart. The plane jolted as the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an emergency landing. Please remain seated. Medical personnel will meet us upon arrival." The cabin buzzed with tension. Passengers whispered, cried, or prayed quietly. Marcus sat frozen, clutching Malik's small hand while Danielle continued monitoring his breathing. The boy was alive, but barely. Sandra stood near the galley, her hands trembling. The weight of what she'd done pressed down harder than the cabin pressure itself. Her once steady voice was gone. She replayed every moment in her mind, the arrogance, the dismissal, the torn papers, and now it all felt unreal. When the wheels finally hit the runway, applause didn't break out. Only silence. As the aircraft rolled to a stop, paramedics rushed aboard. They gently lifted Malik onto a stretcher, his father beside him, refusing to let go. "He's going to make it," Danielle whispered, trying to comfort him. Sandra wanted to help, to say something, anything, but guilt chained her where she stood. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps. A man in a navy blue security uniform stepped into the cabin. His presence commanded instant respect. Silver hair, broad shoulders, calm, cold eyes that had seen decades of aviation crises. "Who's the lead flight attendant?" he asked. Sandra turned slowly, her voice barely audible. I am, sir." The man's gaze locked on her name tag. "Sandra Blake?" Her throat tightened. "Yes, sir." He took a deep breath, his jaw tightening. "Captain Robert Blake, Airline Safety Division." The cabin collectively gasped. The nurse looked between them in shock. Marcus turned, realizing what was unfolding. Robert's eyes softened when he saw Malik being wheeled away. Then he turned to his daughter, his expression hard as stone. "You grounded a child fighting for his life," he said quietly, voice trembling with both fury and disappointment. "Now I'm grounding you." He reached out, unclipped the badge from her uniform, and handed it to the co-pilot standing beside him. The sound of the metal pin clicking free echoed like a judgment. Sandra's tears finally fell. "Dad, I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," Robert said sharply, "and the world just watched you say them." The flash of passengers' phones continued. Her humiliation, her downfall, captured forever. Sandra Blake's career ended that day not with applause, but with silence. Weeks passed since that unforgettable flight, but the world hadn't stopped talking about it. News headlines, talk, Shows and social media flooded with the video of the boy on life support and the flight attendant who crossed the line. Yet amid the chaos, one story shone brighter. Malik Carter survived. After days in intensive care, Malik finally opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was his father's tear-streaked smile. "You scared me, champ," Marcus whispered, holding his hand. Malik's voice was weak but steady. "Did we make it to Chicago?" Marcus laughed through his tears. "Yeah, buddy, you made it, like a fighter." The airline released a public apology, launching a medical access training program for all crew members. But the biggest change happened far away from the cameras, inside the heart of Sandra Blake. She had been suspended indefinitely, her career in ruins. Yet every night she replayed the image of Malik gasping for air and the sound of her father's voice saying, "You grounded a child fighting for his life." Unable to live with the guilt, Sandra visited the hospital one quiet morning. She carried a small teddy bear wearing pilot wings, the same kind she used to give children during flights. Marcus saw her from the hallway, tense at first, but when Malik noticed the uniform folded under her arm, he smiled faintly. "Are you the plane lady?" he asked innocently. Sandra's lips trembled. "Yes, sweetheart, and I came to say, I'm so sorry." Malik looked at her oxygen mask, then back at her. "It's okay. Maybe you just forgot how to care." Those words shattered her. For the first time in years, she cried not out of shame, but release. Weeks later, Sandra joined a volunteer air aid program, helping fly medical supplies and patients for free. The very skies where she once failed a child became the place she helped save them. Marcus and Malik often received postcards. From her, each one signed, "From someone who learned to care again." As their story went viral, millions watched, not in anger, but in hope. Hope that compassion can still rise above cruelty. And somewhere high above the clouds, another plane soared, engines humming softly, just like Malik's breathing. A reminder that kindness is the only thing that should ever take flight. Moral: no rule is greater than a life. Compassion isn't policy, it's humanity. If this story touched your heart, share it to remind the world that one act of empathy can change everything.